Hey everybody, it's Matt Fury from Avid here once again in Park City at the Sundance Film Festival. As always, introducing you to some incredible filmmakers, directors, editors, writers, composers, sometimes all the above. That's what we have right now. Joining me from Skywalkers: A Love Story, writer, director, and editor Jeff Zimbalist, and editor Alannah Byrnes. Skywalkers: A Love Story. I read the description for this, Jeff, and I didn't know that I'm not sure I want to see this. I'm a little afraid of heights, but before I give everything away, tell us what Skywalker's A Love Story is about.
Two Russian climbers who illegally trespass onto the world's highest buildings and do acrobatic stunts that they film with a variety of cameras, including drones. We went into the film because I had a little history of doing some skywalking myself, or rooftopping as they call it. But our North Star the whole time during production and through the edit was that we didn't just want this to be a film about the fear of falling from heights. We wanted it to be a film about the fear of falling in love. So ultimately, it really is about relationship dynamics, and it uses extreme climbing as a metaphor for romantic trust.
What's harder, directing an indie film or being a rooftopper?
Rooftopping is, as soon as you get over the fear, there's nothing hard about it at all. And I would say the same about filmmaking. Yeah.
Oh, fair enough. Alannah, how did how did this project, have you and Jeff worked together before? How did you come on this project?
Yes, I was lucky enough to work with Jeff on a feature prior to this, and that was actually my debut. That was my first feature as main editor. Victoria Marquette, who's a fantastic producer, was on the Norman Mailer film, How to Come Alive with Norman Mailer. She had faith in me and sold me to Jeff. Jeff had faith in me, and we took a risk, and that feature went great. I cannot speak to why Jeff hired me on this, though, because it's an entirely different feature and a lot of challenges. It was verite, a lot of verite, where the previous film was mostly archive. So that was a huge challenge for me, but I was ready for it. And then also being primarily in Russian was a huge challenge as well. But yeah, that's how I'm just lucky he was willing to continue working with me.
Sweet. She's being very humble. She's an incredible editor.
Yeah. Okay, so it's not uncommon for there to be co-editors on a project. To co-edit with the director is kind of a new take. How did that work in terms of how you share the load? Because the person you're sharing the load with is also the one ultimately who has the vision for where the film needs to go.
I will let Jeff answer some of this, but I think a huge part of it, if you don't mind me saying, is that there was so much verite footage. It was a lot to go through. We had a wonderful producer, an assistant editor who went through a lot of it, organized it extremely well, subtitled it, translated it, subtitled it, passed it off to me, wonderful selects, and I had to break that down, and that took a lot of time. And so, Act 2, Act 3 are mostly verite, and we're also using the GoPro footage that the talents themselves filmed. But Act 1 was an entirely different story. We had to get them falling in love. We had to get their original archive and bring that together and understand their story very quick. It was just, I felt like Act 1 was entirely different from Act 2, Act 3. So I think it got to a point where Jeff was like, all right, let me take the wheel. Let me take the wheel. We got a skeleton for Act 1, because I started Act 2, and he took the wheel for Act 1. And then as time went on, I think in a way we both had our hands in everything, and we're constantly giving each other notes. He's a fantastic and extremely fast editor, which could be intimidating at times. But I think it came together very beautifully, and I learned a lot about really threading the needle, which I think he's very good at. He had a vision, and he knew how to communicate that, and I just hope that I could spark inspiration and ideas and style that he enjoyed.
Yeah, so Jeff, Alannah used the term skeleton. From your perspective, how did you want to build this out? Were there certain pieces, you talked about the verite and the different acts, the archival footage, the GoPro footage. What were your tentpoles where you said, okay, this is what I'm going to hang my film around?
We knew the backstory was amazing. The film takes place over 7 years, and we had original content from all of those 7 years. The biggest challenge was, when do you move from backstory to present day story? And we always wanted that to be at the 30-minute mark or earlier, so the end of Act 1. But it was really difficult to get the amount of plot development we had shoved into those first 30 minutes without it feeling like its own voice, too big a departure from the voice of the rest of the film. So I think we went in with that structural skeleton from the get-go, and then we just played around with chronology Often when you have too much to work in, you start to go nonlinear, right? And we did play with a number of nonlinear structures. And one of the important parts of the collaboration was that Alannah was able to bring fresh eyes to all the material, to see it from a completely different perspective, find the humanity and the dimension in the characters. I was very close to it. I'd been living in it for a really long time. And so giving her the sections where we wanted our characters to be most vulnerable, to have the most authenticity, to be the most accessible, made a lot of sense. And I went into the flashier, more stylized section. And then we played with the balance of that. I think our first cut, we felt that the first act was just too different a voice. And so we slowed it down, brought a little bit more breathing room in, more verite, and then we sped up the rest of it. And we added more music and more montages and ultimately landed somewhere in between. So it was a really fun process.
Yeah, it really was.
So from the technical aspect of collaborating, how did that work? I mean, I guess I should go back to the question that I didn't ask, which is, what is your editorial setup and how did you set it up in a way that would allow you to collaborate efficiently?
Ooh, it was tricky. I'm not gonna lie, it was really tricky. I mean, he's been working remotely for a really long time. I've been working remotely since COVID, like many other editors. So, I've got my own setup at home. I actually didn't meet him until November. I'd been working with him for a really long time. Met him in person in November. Yeah, we use Frame.io. I export things for him. He takes a look at it. Sometimes he take his own stab at it, send it back to me, and we'll work that way. But I'm very lucky to have found someone who is willing to be patient with the remote process. Not everyone wants to do that. Some people want to be in the room, which I completely respect. But we've been very good about, quick export, check it out. I like to be fast for him because it doesn't matter if it's exactly what we need. It's just, let's get it out, let's talk about it, and rework it after that. But I hope that answered your question.
I was in Asia for a big part of this. So you were working from the Bay Area, and I was working from Asia because I was going back and forth to shoots. We were doing pickups pretty much throughout the edit. And so I was working off a laptop and a hard drive, which I guess, it was a small screen, but it translated to,
I don't know how you did that.
when we got into post, it was great to finally see it bigger, and the film is meant to be on the big screen, so we kept that in mind. And then there was just a lot of long conversations, and we have an efficient but open-minded creative process with the team where anyone's welcome to jump in, no matter sort of what their rank or profile, and a lot of smart people on the team, hard workers.
Yeah, very hard workers.
Well, you bring up an interesting point, and it was something Alannah and I were talking about earlier. You talk to editors or features all the time where you're like, oh, I'm in my room with 20-inch monitors. Maybe I have my 55-inch OLED, but then you get on the mix stage, you get into the big screening room, and you see the actual scope of things, and it changes. You look at that big frame, and you go, the timing feels different to me. The way the characters come in and out of the frame is different. When you first started working, especially for a film like this, in that big screen, did you think, oh, I've got to go back and tweak these things?
I think I've learned over the years not to get too attached. It's impossible to have a direct translation of the way it feels and the way things sync up in the offline when you actually pull it all together with the high-res material and with a good mix. So you have to let go. You control it the best you can, but you also keep an open mind, and maybe something's a little better in the new structure. I often will loosen up at that stage rather than tighten the grip.
Were there tools in Media Composer that helped you with this process, whether it was in terms of managing all the footage, doing any sort of visual effects, anything, sound, that you really relied upon to get Skywalkers further along in the offline, and you get to a place where you're like, we have the story, now we can just tighten it up?
Yeah, I'll say, well, a big part of it was the fact that it was in Russian. I felt that I was doing a lot of sound mixing within Avid to get things to be clear and succinct in that language. I know that sounds so weird, but it became a part of it.
Yeah.
And, I don't speak Russian. I got very used to it, very comfortable with it. Our wonderful producer, Maria, she speaks Russian, so I would often pass things to her, and I would make cuts that weren't right, or like this, certain sound levels weren't exactly where they needed to be to get the word across, and that was a very intimate process of, it was a lot of sound mixing, which I don't know if that relayed back to him, but
No, it did. Yeah, it was
yeah,
great.
that
No,
was a big
it was really
process.
important. Super layered sound design throughout
Yeah,
this thing.
very much so.
I mean, you're talking about wanting the viewer to feel like they're climbing these cranes,
Yeah.
and in order to translate that even just to the finance team early on, you want to get it to that level. This is what the visceral experience will feel like. We also both do a lot of our own 2D stuff as we're working, so we would do quick passes on graphics, and we both work cross-platform. So brought in a bunch of Adobe work, some After Effects, Photoshop. So we were building a finished product even in the offline. By the time we got that first rough cut out, it felt pretty good, right? It was at a stage where I think the financier felt like there wasn't really any missing pieces. So then to take that into Flame was often just to do the same thing but higher res.
So now I've been asking editors, hey, you found out you got into Sundance. Were there any things you needed to do once you're in to get the film, yikes, get the film ready for the festival? In years past, it seems like the answer was, oh yeah, we had to rush the color timing. We had to lose a few minutes. We had to do the titles. For you, it sounds like the film was finished. Am I wrong, or were there certain things you had to do to prep for Sundance?
There's a funny saying because our character has to climb a ladder for 2 hours, our two main characters towards the end of the film. And there's a line that says, and the name of the building's the Merdeka, and there's a line where she says, "Will this Merdeka ever end?" And our producer would text me that on a pretty frequent basis, because every time we thought we were done, there was something else. This is the first time in my career where we had a DCP watchback, which had technical issues. So we didn't end up delivering till a couple days before our screening. So every stage of the process, we had to be very diligent to make sure that things were working technically, and we went right up to the wire. Yeah, I mean, getting it ready for Sundance to us meant this has to read as a theatrical experience. Let's pour the resources we have left into making this feel big scope. That premiere had better say, you want to see this in a movie theater because we're selling it at Sundance, and those are the buyers we want.
Well, one way or the other, the Merdeka ended and you're here. The film is in. I don't know that I'm going to see it because, again, just hearing you say that there were medics on hand in case you had issues with heights, I don't know. But it sounds like you both did incredible work together, and the film is here. Congratulations, and thank you so much to both of you for spending the time with us to talk about it.
No, my pleasure. Thank you guys so much.
Well, there you have it. Some more cool filmmakers, directors, editors, composers, even writers. They're all here at Sundance. Stay with us on the Avid social media channels for more. We'll see you there.